and I got to 50,000 words in a hurry, and it just didn't feel right. I felt like I was trying to write what I was supposed to write, and I said, screw this, and just, kind of go scorched earth and restart it.
Welcome to the Thriller Writer Lab, where every thriller goes under the microscope, one book at a time. I'm your host, Mark Nadeau, and this is where best-selling, award-winning, and emerging thriller authors share the craft, research, and real-world experiences that power today's most gripping stories. Joining me today is Josh Jensen, and we are putting his neo-Western thriller, No Easy Way Back, under the microscope. Josh, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So let's start with your pitch for the book. Tell me all about No Easy Way Back.
No Easy Way Back is a neo-Western thriller. I'm not sure if that's an official categorization. That's what I'm going with. I'm trying to own it. And it's set in my home state, in my hometown in Utah. And it centers around a protagonist named Graham Hayes that's a former member of a Tier 1 unit called the Regimental Reconnaissance Company. Throughout my research and stuff, I found out that it's pretty not a lot to go on there, so it gave me some creative freedom and gave me a non-Navy SEAL type ex-military protagonist. And at its core, it's a story about redemption. He reluctantly returns home to Utah when his kind of estranged, chaotic brother finds himself in the center of a storm he can't really navigate. And Graham returns home and faces his demons and also some very real threats from a corrupt venture capitalist with some cartel ties. And there's a lot of Western undertones and themes and things like that. So I really tried to blend the modern thriller with Western storytelling.
Awesome. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Neo-Western. What does that mean? What does that mean to you if someone picks up this book and wants to read it? What should they expect? Are we talking about, and obviously I've read the book, so I know the answer, but just for the reader, should they expect, horseback and cowboys, or should they, you mentioned modern warfare or modern Tier 1 teams. So let's talk about that a little bit.
No, I really tried to make it very Western themed in a modern thriller sense. So I think a lot of these quote unquote modern Westerns are thrillers with cowboy hats. And that's not what I wanted. That's not what I set out to accomplish. That's pretty easy to do. Take a large scale plot like Fate of the World and stick it in Montana. No, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be centered around like Western themes and landscape and family and things like that, your favorite Westerns probably touch on to some extent or another.
So what was the inspiration for this book? I know in your bio, you talk about you were 13. There was a murder that rocked your town, and that inspired a book. I wasn't quite sure if it was this book. So where did this one come from?
It started as that. So I had at the University of Mary, my freshman year of college, I took a narrative writing course, and it was basically this, but not this. It was a different character, different plot, things like that. But it was a thriller set in Payson, Utah, a little random Payson, Utah. The only thing we're known for is it's the place where the original Footloose movie was filmed. But I always wanted to write something set in that setting, that rural Utah setting that hasn't been explored much. There's a lot of Wyoming stuff and a lot of Montana stuff, but there hasn't been a lot of like Utah thrillers. So that's kind of always what I wanted to try to do. Okay,
so break me through how the story actually came about. Like what came first? Was it the vision of Graham and this redemption story you mentioned, or was it just I have this landscape, now what do I do with it?
The setting came first. I just always wanted to put something in the mountains and the town that I grew up in. That's really where it started. And then as I started reading more and more thrillers, like my dad's a huge C.J. Box fan and Robert Ludlum fan, so there were just thrillers all over the house. And so that's what I started reading pretty young, probably too young. But yeah, so the setting came first, and then as I started to really just love and appreciate thrillers, I decided to merge those two things.
So talk about the timeline a little bit, because you were 13 when the murder happened. When did you feel like you were ready to write this story? And then how many years did that take to build this book? How did that go?
Yeah, so like I said, I've been reading thrillers for a long time, and I was reading Blue Heaven by C.J. Box on a work trip in Atlanta, just like bored in my hotel room. That was in 2024. Yeah, like spring of 2024. And I was reading that, and I started writing it right then and there in the hotel. And it just kind of flowed through. And I got to 50,000 words in a hurry, and it just didn't feel right. I felt like I was trying to write what I was supposed to write. And I said, screw this, and just, kind of go scorched earth and restart it. And I got the first draft done in probably 10 months. And then from there, it was, another probably 6 months of just editing like a madman, revising, having people read it, and all that stuff that comes with writing a first book.
And you mentioned, so are you a plotter or a pantser, I guess would be, the popular terms, or somewhere in between. So writing 50,000 words and then starting over is sort of like the world's longest outline, or the longest outline you can have. How did the writing process for this come out? Was it like sort of pantsing, flying by the seat of your pants, the term, building into it, or did you outline it and build on it?
I knew like a few things I wanted to touch on. Like I had the character, and then I had kind of the villain, and then I had kind of the transformation, the journeys that they wanted to go on. But how I got there it was kind of going on feel. I'm very much a momentum writer. Some days I can write 5,000 words in a day, and other days it's like 300 is the best I can do. It's not clicking. And I don't push super hard on those days. I just, reset and come back the next day. And so it's like this, it's all over the place. I'm not a very like strict, I write 1,200 words a day and call it good. If I'm flowing, I don't stop.
That's great to have in the process, because it can be really hard. Forcing ourselves to sit in the chair is like one thing, and then trying to force a word count is another. Or for me, I write to a certain amount of time. Like I'll sit there for, however long it takes for time, rather than a number of words. Will you give yourself so much time, or will you, like, you sit down, you start writing these words, and then you feel like, okay, I'm distracted, I want to go on my phone, this is good enough for today?
I don't have time constraints. Every day is different. So I, like a lot of us, I have a full-time job, and I coach high school wrestling in my spare time as well. So my writing window is like, start at 10 p.m. most of the time, and it could be until 1 or 11, just depending on how things go. Okay.
So 50,000 words this book was in its, let's say, its first draft, if we even want to call it that. Yeah. What are the differences when you say scrap a book as opposed to rewriting it or heavily editing it? What does that mean to you? What changed, without spoilers, I guess, what changed between this book of 50,000 words that you wrote and then coming back to do it again? Because I imagine it would be really hard not to fall back into the same 50,000 words, or you're almost trying to get yourself to somewhere in the 50,000 words where we can reuse some of that, right? It's like, oh, that didn't feel right, but if I write these 10,000 words, maybe I can hit word 20,000 from my last manuscript and then continue from there. You know what I mean? Or copy and paste and juggle things, like, or did you just like delete and I'm doing something completely different? Like, what happened?
It was pretty much from scratch. I took a few things, but it was the characters had similar names, but there was even some changes even there with like character names and backstories. Initially I had the two brothers. They're both I had like the ex-military reclusive brother, and then I had a cop brother. So it's totally different. Okay. I was like, all right, I'm going to switch. So I'm going to go with a kind of a loose cannon screw up brother and kind of have some tension there. So yeah, totally different. Graham Hayes is the main character. There's a conflict involving his brother and a cartel, and that's about the only similarities between that version 1 that we're not even going to be titled No Easy Way Back, and then what's out now.
How painful was that to hit delete? And was there a time between deleting this draft and writing another one, or were you like, okay, I know this direction, I know what I need to do, and I'm pumped for it?
Yeah, so I knew when I got to 50,000 words, I could do it. I was like, okay, I got there. And the second time around, it came fast. I had a lot of momentum and like confidence, and I was pretty, just hell bent on getting that story done, because it was the one I wanted to write initially anyway. And the first one was me trying to, follow the template, and it never felt right to follow the template.
Okay. What do you think of as a template? When you think about, I assume you mean thriller template, like the shorter chapters and things. Like, what went wrong in the template as you see it?
So I found myself kind of slipping into, I don't want to like call out any authors because they're more successful than I am, but I just found myself like slipping into like the super common like tropes and and things like that. Like I still do the short chapters. I think that's great. Structurally a lot there, but like the tropes and the just like the main set pieces, I was kind of trying to follow that, and it just didn't feel right to me. It
Okay.
didn't do my character justice. It's not how I operate in my personal life. I'm kind of a contrarian in some ways, and so I just wanted to do it my way.
Okay. So when you wrote this draft of this book, close enough to the one I'm reading,
Yeah.
did you write it with any themes in mind or any warnings or anything for people to, when they close the book, beyond entertainment, was there something, a message that you were hoping that they were going to stop and think about?
Yeah, so there's obviously there's some stuff with Graham's father is kind of like a character within it, but he's not around. And so it was really like family centric, blood thicker than water type of messaging, and then just general resilience. You have his older brother who's a alcoholic, and he's battling that as well as getting hunted down by a bunch of murderers. And so resilience is just kind of the word I kept going back to as I wrote. Is these are resilient people. Like they're in a tough spot, and they're gonna have to tough it out, and it's not gonna be pretty. It may not be super clean, but yeah, like what can you power through, and what are you willing to do for the people you care about?
Yeah. When you knew family and resilience was part of it, did you then shape Graham and Colt to be who they are as people, because hardened characters is what you needed for this story?
Yeah, for sure. I wanted them to, be, because they're the one event that I'll try not to spoil that's, in the past, but that kind of is the reason for Graham being withdrawn and his brother being an alcoholic is the same one. And so I really wanted that to be the central thing, and to show how different people respond to the same incident, and how it could create two very different people, even though it's the same incident.
Yeah. And when you're building characters, once you have them in your mind, do you have a sheet of paper where you have it laid out? Like Graham is this person, and he's like a tier 1, and he's struggling with these things mentally. And then here's his brother. Like, how do you keep him and his brother, who have so many similarities because they are family, how do you keep them separate as voices and characters?
I wish I had a good answer. That's something that's pretty natural to me. Is I've been like, I guess everyone has been, but I've been around a lot of people, and I'll just I'll be at the airport or whatever, and I just kind of listen to people talk, and that's one of the things I'm kind of a natural at, is I can just kind of write people as people. I don't focus too much on characters. I try to write people.
Okay, so you might have like an actual person's in mind, like you've cast your character, so to speak, from just these strangers.
Yeah. So yeah, well, even like people I know, like the character Jack Hillman in there is based on in the book he's a former Green Beret turned high school teacher, and that is a real teacher I had. I had a teacher in high school that was an ex Green Beret, and I maintained a relationship with him even after I graduated. He gave me a wrestling mat, like a training mat, years after I graduated high school. And so I had a lot of conversations with him over the years. And so that's a real person in a lot of ways.
Oh, cool. So was he like a good guy? Like, it sounds like he was like a really good guy. I had a teacher that was a colonel in the military, and he was crazy. Yeah. His the discipline and everything he expected in his classroom, it was nuts.
Yeah. No, this guy was great. I mean, he was a little crazy too, and walked to the beat of his own drummer, but really good guy. I mean, he would do anything for anyone, even if it was like quote unquote against the rules. If a kid needed help, he was going to help him by any means. And cussed a lot in the classroom, and kids loved him for it. And, I always say he's like a real life Hemingway character. I had some pretty, for a high school kid, some pretty serious conversations with him about stuff that he experienced. He got blown up and things of that nature.
Wow. So I want to jump to, in your book, I think it's at the back, you have a QR code to the playlist for the book, which I think is really unique. I've seen playlists before, but to have a QR code where the people who read the book and then go and listen to the book, and it sounds like the playlist was built not just like, here's the random music I was listening to while I wrote the book, but it sounds like the music really had like tones for like, perhaps this song fits this scene and that song fits that scene. So what is it?
Yeah, no, it's a real thing. I mean, I listen to music the whole time I'm writing. I have a playlist that's 40 hours long. I have a whole work week
Wow.
of music right there, and it's really impacted how I write. I'm a huge fan of like outlaw country from the Texas and Oklahoma guys that don't have record labels and came up through the bar scene and things like that. Like Cody Jinks, who I reference in the book, as well as like my all-time favorite artist. I finally got to see him in concert last summer, and he's a fantastic writer. If you go to the song credits, he's the lone writer on most of his tracks, and he explores a lot of themes of redemption and resilience and screwing up, and had his own sobriety journey that he's pretty open about in his music, and I use that a lot for Colt.
And I think it says somewhere that the songs, you can correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
but the songs also impacted, like you use chapter titles, which is also unique. That had like the chapter title had a theme for every chapter that we read. So how did that play in?
It was just thought it was fun. So I'm a huge fan of Greg Hurwitz right there. And he gives in his Orphan X books, he gives every chapter its own little like title. And I decided to go a little leaner, like some of his are a little longer, and every chapter is one or two words titled. And there's a couple of them that are just literal song titles. Like there's one, Always Running, off the top of my head. That's a Cody Jinks song.
Okay.
And so I weave in a few references to songs, some overtly, some more under the radar, more for me, my own amusement than anything. If people pick up on it, they pick up on it. But yeah, it's a huge factor in just themes and as well as writing and how to phrase things.
Do you feel like when you're playing like a fast-paced song, you need a fast-paced scene, and then when you're writing something emotional, you have to change the song from your playlist to make it like slower? And
no, it's more about the words. I try to focus on the words themselves, and try to listen to stuff that's well written and has real writing behind it. Don't people get mad at me all the time when they have their favorite artist and I pull it up and I'm like, there's 11 writers on this 3-minute song. I mean, how authentic can it be?
That's fair.
So I'll start a few arguments in that way.
I love that. It's very unique. So the other thing that you mentioned was that your dad and your grandfather helped inspire you to write the book through having books around the house and things. Was there anything else that they helped inspire as far as being able to get this book out into the world?
Yeah, I mean, my dad has always just had my back. He was my first wrestling coach when I was 5 years old, and has just always supported me. I remember one time I was in college, I was at a tournament in Fargo, North Dakota, and I came off the mat for my first match and I'd won. I was just exhausted because that's just the nature of it. And I was just soaked in sweat and exhausted. And I get up there and I didn't know he was coming. And my dad was just hanging out like in the stands, just showed up and watched me compete. And so that's kind of, I always use that story to kind of describe who he is. And he's that way with all my siblings. There's 4 of us, and he's, whatever you're doing, he's got your back. And in the case of this endeavor, he's read a lot. He has an English degree. And so he was like hands-on helpful. He was my first he's my first beta reader.
Awesome.
I hand it off to him and he'll text me, be like, hey, like, if this doesn't make sense, XYZ. Like, he'll give it to you.
I love that. I hope my son writes books someday too. He's not into writing, but I hope he does someday. Oh, that's awesome to have someone in your corner like that. I have found a lot of people who have found success in writing whether or not it's like you have your dad, people have like husbands or wives or just someone in their family that they're able to beta read, or just someone to encourage them in their corner. As a writer, I think it's super important.
Yeah. So that was my dad. And then my grandpa is, he is partially, so, I've mentioned Graham's father is like kind of a big factor in like who he is. And he's kind of a mixture of my dad and my grandpa. My grandpa is right now at this moment, 85 years old. He saddles up a horse and he goes and rides mountain trails a couple times a week. He's retired and probably works harder now than he ever did. He's shoes his own horses still, and we'll go help him haul hay. And he thinks it's funny to try to like beat us to hay bales. We're like, dude, go watch, go hang out. We got this. And he's just the king of one-liners and just kind of earthy, salt of the earth wisdom.
That's great. Yeah, you didn't have anyone, it's funny when I hear people whose parents say, you get a real job, you got to go work for the
Yeah.
government. Creative work, you're not going anywhere, but you didn't have
Yeah.
that. That's great. Your dad was an English major.
Yeah.
How lucky. So this story itself, what kind of challenge did you have writing this story?
Just my own kind of insecurities, I guess. It's kind of terrifying to put your name on something and then just release it out into the world. Because I wrote it and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I wrote it just because I just felt like, I wanted to be a finisher. I wanted to finish something like that. And I got it. I, got to that like novel length word count and I had it there and I just kind of kept it to myself. And I did end up telling a friend of mine who's he's active duty in the Air Force right now. He's a captain and good friend of mine. We coach wrestling together and all that stuff. And he's a fellow reader. And he finally bullied me into like letting him read it. And he kind of like he's a very direct person. He's like, dude, this doesn't suck. You should put it out there. And so then I went through and I like did another round of revisions and things like that. And I, had that validation from him. And I was like, you know what, screw it. Let's do this. And I tossed it out there and that was a year ago. And here we are.
Wow. So it went from your friend was the first person to read it. When did your dad, he was also a beta reader? What was the process like for there?
There wasn't much of a process for the first one. The second one had a process. The first one, no, this friend read it, or no, he didn't even read the whole thing. He read, I think I sent him the first 5 or 6 chapters, and just to get some validation. And then once he kind of bullied me into publishing it, then I sent it to my dad, and then he read the whole thing. And then I had 3 or 4 other people read it cover to cover and provide just kind of big rocks feedback, kind of those developmental edits. And then I hired out a copy editor from Fiverr and a proofreader just to clean up stuff.
Okay.
And so the first one was kind of haphazard, just, you read it. Okay, now I'm going to hire these freelance editors and I'm going to read it again and I'm going to read it out loud to myself and see if it sounds good and make changes based on how it sounds that way. So it's all over the place. I probably over-polished it.
Was building confidence in this story, was it challenging to just like once you gave it the first few chapters to that one person, were you still in doubt as an author? Were you in doubt right up to the launch point and the feedback in reviews and stuff? And how did you get over that fear of knowing when is this book like, or is this a good book versus, I have family and friends that are reading it, but they also love me.
Yeah.
And then there's this community of readers who do not, and of course I'm talking from my own experience as well. Cause when you get it out there into the world, it's not just scary, but you have to know that there are people who are not going to like something that you write and you have to deal with that. But then you have that imposter syndrome that hits. And then you have that, oh, was this book actually good? Or, because the real people who are the reviewers, how did you build confidence and how did it go from there?
So I did have I don't know what happened. I don't even know how I got a response to this, but I won't name him, but I sent it just kind of cold to a very prominent thriller reviewer, super plugged in guy. And I sent it to him. I was hoping to get it featured on like a newsletter or things like that. And that didn't happen, but he read the whole thing and his feedback was like super positive. He's like, this is like, you got good instincts. Your character development is good. He listed off a few things and also a couple things I could do better. And he told me, he's like, I really think if you wanted to, you could get traditionally published. And so when I had that validation from somebody that kind of reads thrillers for a living, I was like, okay, let's do this. It doesn't suck. Let's see what happens.
Okay. You just reached out to him cold, sent him.
Yeah, I sent him I sent him a Twitter direct message and I happened to get a reply.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so I didn't get the exposure from it that I hoped I would. So, but oh well, it gave me a boost of confidence, and we're 2 books in.
Exactly. So there is a book 2, and it's already out.
Came out at the end of April.
End of April, right?
Yeah.
So did you write book 1 with the intent of writing book 2? We'll probably get into this more in the spoiler because of how the book ends. But did you, let's just say, as you were writing it, were you now you ditched this earlier copy, now you have you have this fresh copy. In this fresh copy, were you intending to write a series in a book two without knowing what the audience and what people were going to say, whether or not it was even worth a book two?
Yeah, so I always knew I had to write multiple Graham Hayes books. I've said it to everyone who will listen. There's not going to be 30 of them. I could write 30 books, but there will be new characters, new stories, totally unrelated to this thing. I have no interest in writing 30 books about the same person. That's
Okay.
just not how I'm wired. I don't think his character is built for that. He's kind of reactive and just kind of takes what comes, and it wouldn't make sense for him to continually just be in the crosshairs for 30 books.
Yeah. Okay.
But no, there's always going to be multiple.
Okay. Do you have an idea of how many? Have you outlined or plotted this is the concept for this one, this is the concept?
Yeah, right now I'm pretty set on a trilogy with it. There could be some other ones, but these first three are going to be a kind of a cohesive trilogy. As you mentioned, the first one kind of ends in a way that opens the door for the second one, and the second one opens the door for the third. And those will act as kind of a just very tied together trilogy. Could there be some other standalones that are somewhat detached from those? Possibly. I have a couple ideas.
Okay.
But yeah, these three are going to be trilogy.
Okay. So then when it comes to research, how much research went into this? This is your hometown. So are you like walking around with your notebook and just or I guess you know it so well anyway, maybe you wouldn't even have to, you're just sitting there. But this is all real to life, like the places that we see, the terrain and stuff. This is all your hometown. So was there a lot of research, or was it mostly just knowing what you wanted to do and knowing the terrain already?
No, the setting I know by heart. It's in my blood. I'm a fourth generation Utahn, and my grandpa and both my parents and I all went to the same high school, so I'm just deeply rooted in a lot of the places in there. Like I talk about Midway, the cabin that Colt kind of retreats to is in St. Pete County down south, and my mom's dad had a cabin down there for years that we visited in the summer to go fish and four-wheel and things like that. So I've even been there, and I really wanted to include that area of Utah as well and kind of cover a couple of different counties in central Utah. So yeah, most of my research was in regard to like military stuff, backgrounds, some tactical things, and things of that nature. But like local history, I just knew that by heart.
Do you feel like the title of the book is bigger than Graham, or did you create the story and then the title came to you after? Because it's a brilliant title, and we don't know how brilliant it is until the end, essentially. So we'll talk about that exactly. But what came first?
The story always comes first. I try to write it all. I try to get the story out there, and then I suffer with titles the worst. Okay. I work in marketing full time, and my least favorite thing to write is the freaking headlines. Okay. I'll write a 1,500 word blog article or white paper or something, and I'll just mull over title idea after title idea after title idea. And so I try to get the content itself done, and then try to title it appropriately.
Oh, cool. So did this title then, it came after the book was written, I guess. Did you pull it from your own book as a result of having written almost those exact words? Yeah, it came straight from the prose. Okay. Yeah. Well done. It's a very good title. Thanks. Every time somebody reads it, the guy on Instagram recently did a video review on it and had ultra positive feedback and put it in front of, his audience of like 3,000 people. And the one question I always ask, I said, dude, I always ask this, did you catch the title in it? And the answer is almost always like, yes, they catch it. So it's fun. And so there's many point of views in the book. And how did you know which voice to go to and how not to overwhelm the shifting from different character point of views? So big thing that I was pretty strict on was zero head hopping. Without a clear page break or chapter break, I would stay in the same point of view the entire time and try to really make sure they were only observing things that they would observe, that I didn't intrude too much on their perspective. And so when there's parts where I'm trying to help readers learn more about Graham, he's this kind of grumpy introvert that, it's, getting him to talk about himself is like pulling his teeth.
And so I always had to I used other characters to kind of flesh him out. I used Jack a lot for that. And even though Graham could be involved in the conversation, you're not getting his thoughts on it. You're just getting this other character to excavate it because he won't do it himself. And that's just not who he is. And so I tried to be just true to each character and make sure there's just clear breaks and that I could just reset and write it from Jack's point of view, Colt's point of view, and things like that.
Do you keep track of that as you're shifting throughout the book and the characters, or is that just all in your head and you're able to just maintain the memory of it?
I kind of go by feel for sure, but there's times where I've gone through and I'll go back to a chapter and I'll rewrite it from another point of view. I'm like, oh, okay, it doesn't make sense to have it be from Maddie's point of view. It makes more sense to have it from Graham's in this case, and vice versa. Yeah. So like some of the feedback I got early on from my first reader, he was like, I felt like I was reading a different, style of writing chapter to chapter at times. And I explained kind of the method to my madness. I was like, well, the villains is going to think about the situation a lot different than the heroes, the protagonists. Yeah. And I tried to just be true to their perspective, as warped as it might be.
And you feel like that just all comes natural. You're not like taking notes about the beats.
I try to just know who these people are and just, kind of put myself in their shoes and be like, all right, what would a messed up SOB do in this situation when we're talking about Wade Carson? And and I kind of hate myself for those like chapters. There's one chapter in it, chapter 50 specifically, a guy he's like, dude, that they made the hair on my neck stand up. Like, how'd you write that? I was like, I didn't like it as much as you did, but this had to be done.
Yeah. What did Wade Carlson, because you were just talking about him. What does he represent as a character? Is he just like a really bad dude? I mean, I guess we'll kind of get into this in the spoiler section a bit more because there's the end and how that goes. But as you're writing him, is he just pure evil to you, or how did you approach him as a character?
No, I don't like pure evil. I like complicated. So I, kind of wrote out this whole backstory with him slipping into corruption with the DEA, and it starts with skimming a little bit of money from drug busts, and then it just kind of spirals out from there. It's just this kind of slippery slope where, he might have felt small and I can't talk right now, small and of no consequence in the grand scheme of things. But once you cross that line, you can't always uncross it. And so I tried to kind of lean into that. I don't know if you've read much Don Winslow, but he does a really good job of writing these characters that just descend into corruption, and you're inside their head as they do it and justify it. And early on, they don't think it's a big deal. And then the next thing you know, they're just in this pit they can't get themselves out of. And a lot of the times they just accept it and say, this is who I am now, and just keep going.
Yeah. Okay. So as we wrap up a little bit, what advice would you give someone who just published their first or second book?
What kind of advice? Just how to promote it? How to, what kind of advice are we looking for here?
Well, that's just it. So what is the most important thing to you once you've published like book one? Is it the marketing that they need to focus on, or is it book two? There's a lot of, industry talk about the approaches.
Yeah. So for me, I started focusing on the marketing a little bit later, despite that being what I do for a living. But while I was editing, I was rough drafting the second book, and I wanted to make sure that the second one was just as good, and I could get it out within a year of the other one publishing, just to get on a professional cadence. You look at all your favorite authors, they're releasing a book pretty much every year, same month, give or take. And I want to follow that cadence. And so I wanted to make sure as I was editing this one, the second one wasn't going to be rushed. And so my advice would be to enjoy writing more than you enjoy publishing. As I've gotten into the kind of this writing world, there's a whole ecosystem and a lot of people, to interact with, and then fellow authors. And I see a lot of, well-intentioned writers they're addicted to publishing, not writing. And I think it needs to be the opposite. Put out the best product you can, because nothing will sink you faster than slick ad copy and graphics that take people to an inferior product.
How do you balance that then? The marketing for your actual time, the need for marketing because of if no one knows it exists, then no one knows it exists. And
Right.
and the need to find not just pleasure in writing, but the need to also grow as a writer and, advancing your skill beyond just writing more prose, even though that is a very effective way to be a better
Yeah.
writer.
Yeah. So my marketing is I've worked for marketing agencies. I've been on in-house teams in a variety of industries. And my marketing, I don't, obviously I'm 29 years old. I don't have a ton of disposable income, but I figured out meta ads to the point where I spend $2 to $5 a day and I make that money back almost always. 99% of the time, that daily budget, I make it back. So I have I call them evergreen Facebook ads, and they're not, they won't expire type of thing. They're not, now I'm pre-order and I don't have to go back and fix them. They're very, character or plot centric. And I've, created some decent graphics that are, attention grabbers, and I've dialed in the audience. And so I just set those up and I check them a little bit and just make sure nothing too crazy is going on, and just let those evergreen Facebook ads run to a very specific audience.
Nice.
I
am glad that's
just right.
Yeah. What about marketing advice then? I'm in a lot of different groups and I hear all about Facebook ads versus Amazon ads versus what do we at BookBub now. People are kind of talking about, but nobody really likes them as far as converting to sales.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone from let's say cosmetic, because marketing is what you do, if it's in that, cosmetic, what advice would you have for the makeup of a graphic or a book for someone who is trying to get that return on investment? Because writing a good hook doesn't mean it may be clickable and you may get thousands of clicks, but as you know, those clicks don't turn into sales. You still have nothing. You're at zero.
Right. Yeah. So with ad copy and graphics, I just think it's important that everything is aligned. I said earlier, nothing will sync you faster than really good ad graphics and ad copy that takes you an inferior product. So make sure there's not a quality gap. And then just, do a lot of testing. Marketing for me is really iterative. I worked in an agency previously, and we would spend the first 30 days just trying stuff. Like, oh, let's try this ad copy with this ad image. And then, try, and just mix it up and just see what the right cocktail is. And then once you find something that works, you write it until it doesn't work anymore, and then you do it all over again. So, be prepared to lose some money in the early going, and, just test.
Okay.
Test and iterate.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. So, and have a budget, because you have to be willing. It's like gambling, right? You have to go into the casino ready to lose your $500 or your $1,000 because you're probably going to before you start getting anything back.
Oh yeah. I lost a lot. I mean, I don't try it much anymore, but I lost money on Amazon ads. I thought that was the place to be. I'm like, oh, this is the main place my book's for sale. And I tried the display ads. I tried the keyword ads, and there was a handful of sales from it, but I can't seem to crack that code. I watch a lot of YouTube videos and things like that. And books are just a different animal than other e-commerce products.
Yeah. 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 It's funny. You would think where the customer is hot to buy, which is Amazon, because they're shopping for a book. You would think that would be the easiest conversion, but it really isn't.
Yeah.
So I have a question from Cleo Ballard. She was the last guest on the show.
All right.
So she wants to know, are you a survivalist? And did you take a bunch of survival courses or spend time in the military prior to writing the book?
Spent a lot of time with members of the military. So I was with my church growing up. I had a young men's leader I won't name him because he's actively doing anti-human trafficking stuff in South America, and is a former Marine and U.S. Marshal. And he would take a bunch of us teenagers out, and we would do high adventure camping, and he would show us how to make snares and make a fish hook out of whatever, and do a ton of hiking and orienteering and things like that. And so did a lot of that with my church group growing up. And then obviously I'm a hunter, I'm a fisherman, big camper. And so a lot of this stuff has just been passed down through my family. My grandpa's killed, I don't know how many deer, legally and illegally. And so he had my dad and uncles hunting young. My dad always tells the story. They were hunting on horseback in winter, and they're riding along, and the trees are bent over because the snow's so heavy. And my uncle ducked and my dad didn't see the tree and was just hanging from this bent over tree, just kicking his legs while he just kept riding. So like that's my like lineage is just a bunch of outdoorsy hunter types, and we're just out and about all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. What opportunities you've had.
Yeah.
Are you going to write, well, let's not spoil, I guess, a future book, but are you going to write like I imagine a scene where you have all these like snares and traps and things set for people who are coming into the woods who are like hunting you kind of thing?
I've thought about it, kind of doing the Rambo thing. We'll see. I don't know. I think that Graham's background is a little more like be invisible based. So this third one I'm working on, he's kind of getting back to his roots. Not because he wants to, because he has to, and he's going into a very remote location. It's not in Utah, that location. They all start in Utah, but the setting does expand in books 2 and 3. But it's very much, outside the wire reconnaissance, be invisible, and try to leave a small footprint. So we'll see if there's some trap stuff. But he's not like a Vietnam veteran that's gonna dig hit it with the spikes and all that stuff.
Well, your authentic experience, I would imagine, would bring that level of authenticity to even simpler traps than Rambo necessarily, right? Because there are probably ways that you can trap people that I would never even think of because I've only seen Rambo that I may never think of, but that are just super simple that because you have a survival experience. Yeah,
I mean, there's a line in my second book where Graham quotes his dad, him and his buddy that he's with in the second one. He says, he's like, I've learned, he's like, if you want to kill something, watch a water source. And his friend goes, oh, is that one of your dad's hunting rules that apply to hunting terrorists? And he goes, yeah.
I love it.
So a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Watch the water source.
Yeah, it's true. So where can listeners find this book and what's coming next and more about you?
So you can find it on Amazon and then anywhere that Ingram puts it on. So there's all kinds of random websites through Ingram's distribution that it pops up on. I don't even know all of them. Barnes & Noble online. But yeah, Amazon's the main spot. But you can find it in a lot of different online retailers.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been great. This is the end of the main show. We're about to head into the spoiler section. So thank you for taking the time for those who are leaving now because they are going to put it on pause and go read it and come back. Thank you.
Yeah.
So spoiler. In the end, Carson is regretful. This is our main villain for those. Well, I guess everyone, if you're here, should know that.
I hope so.
If you're listening to this, you should know. He's regretful of his decisions because of the cartel involvement, despite the things that he's done, which are also terrible. Why write that regret into this story? What about Carson's character were you trying to get across to the reader with it?
That even the most people that'll do terrible things have their limit, and it might seem kind of odd, but his is going from ex-DEA to essentially working for a cartel financier is just a bridge too far for him. That's the final straw. He didn't spend all that time, dodging bullets from sicarios to work with them.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fair. That makes sense for sure. When you were writing the end, you could have left it at the scene with Graham and Maddie at Jack's place. Instead, you set the stage for book 2 with the cartel assassin coming to the airport, and then we know he's going to be hunting down Graham.
Yeah.
Were you always going to write a book? Like, was that the original ending with a book 2 in mind because now you've forced yourself into book 2?
Yeah, so I never wanted to do a super clean ending. Obviously, this is the spoiler chat. The cartel financier, Greg Langston, does get away. Graham gets his kind of personal revenge against Wade Carson, but there's this, the man with the money and the real ties to the cartel is still out there, and he just pissed off the cartel. And so there's that door open, and I always wanted to just keep it rolling. And I think that clean resolutions, they're pretty rare in life, and they're rare in my fiction.
That's fair. And I would say, I don't even know if he got away because the way you set up the moment, like the cartel, the way they're handling him and the way they're treating him at the end of the book with the bag and and the, all this kind
Yeah.
of sort of the semi-torture-ish stuff. Like, yeah, that is dark. And even he says it in the book where he's like, I don't know if I'd rather stay with Graham and died than
Yeah.
be here with the cartel right now. So
Yeah.
that was a good way to end it, because it made me certainly want to read book 2. And it's like watching when you first watch like Lord of the Rings, and you're like, yeah, the first book or the first movie, I guess if I'm saying watching,
Yeah.
the first movie was like really good. It has a bit of a resolution, but I need to know what happens. Right. And you've done that with this book, which was really good. But I asked the question because I know when you don't know how good or how a book 1 is going to sell or how people are going to take it, to put that much effort into, to end it that way, then you have to write a book 2. But as it's obviously done very well, and you did your homework throughout the way, so it was very good.
Yeah, I was rough drafting the second one as I was editing, so I invested a lot in that assassin character. I think his backstory is really, I think it's fun. Kind of, inspired by a lot of my favorite thrillers, and and it, yeah, so it's fun. A lot of ties to. I've been getting really in the weeds of like private military contractors, and so his origins come from that side of the fence. That if you picked up on chapter 1 of No Easy Way Back, Graham there's no love lost with him and the mercenary archetype.
Yeah. There's a moment when Colt and Graham are talking. This goes back to the title conversation a bit that we were having after the major climax, and Graham tells Colt the story of why he wasn't at his dad's funeral. So they finally talk, and years of pain in that relationship. And there seemed to be, and if I'm jumping on the title here, there was an easy way back. The easy way back would have been just to communicate, but yet it feels like something that could actually happen between 2 men, that the communication just drops and then you lose track of your life and things go on. How did you handle that throughout the story and leading to the end? Because so much happened and they never had that conversation until the end.
Yeah. So for me, it was like they both, there's, hints at it. They both wanted to pick up the phone multiple times over the years since their dad passed away. And neither one of them would just pull the trigger because they have this same, stubbornness that they pride themselves in. And it's a double-edged sword. I think I even touch on that where they're like, yeah, we're alive right now because we're stubborn and we don't quit, but we're also kind of messed up because we're stubborn and won't proactively fix these things.
Did you ever feel like you wanted them to have that conversation earlier and you were like, come on guys, you just need to talk it out? Or was that just, you're just like, no, these are the guys?
No, I initially, when he first finds him in the woods and he's all delirious, I initially had like kind of a panicked kind of conversation. And I was like, that's not how Graham Hayes is going to operate. He's mission first, emotional conversations later, if at all. And so I wanted to be true to that and make sure that it was handled the way he would, which is get the threat taken care of first and then deal with the emotional stuff later when you have a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah. I like that about the book. I really like the shorter chapters, and it was clear whose characters we were looking at, and I liked how it moved from chapter to chapter, and you did a good job of building that. Exactly what you're saying, like these guys, they're not spending a lot of time in their own minds. I don't write that way, but I appreciated that you did, because I would be the one who's like going into their heads for 2 paragraphs because I get deep into character because that's the characters that I'm writing. Do you ever feel like there are characters that you want to spend more time in their heads on the page, or does the pace of a thriller just dictate for you that we should keep moving? Because you know what I mean? Like we know the time you spend like talking in your head sometimes in some books, it goes on forever and it's not good. And then there are, you're always trying to find that balance.
Yeah, so it is a balance. And the second one, I do get in a little more introspective because it's a different story. Graham is just, kind of feeling a little worn down. He's just like, I'm tired of fighting. Like, it's all I knew for years. And then I get, I come back and help my brother, and there's a fight there, and then some events happen, and he's just like pulled right back into it, and he really starts to question if he can ever get past it. And so there's a few moments of like solitude in that one where he's like, in his truck, driving the mountains, and he's he looks on one side of the road down, you see the Utah Valley, and there's suburbs and stuff kind of speckling, like surrounded by hayfields, and then he looks right, and there's just this like wide expanse of wilderness. Yeah. And he kind of has these thoughts of just like, this is the line I live in. I'm stuck between, lawman and outlaw in a world that's changing in ways I don't understand and don't really like. And so he does spend a little more time in his head in that second one, because the cast is smaller. There's a little more time with each character just by less points of view. And so I did enjoy that part of him. There's some flashbacks that are like triggered by certain things, like his buddy Louis says something to him, and it triggers a whole flashback that actually serves as a kind of a Chekhov's gun for the third book, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. That was my next point was with there wasn't a lot of like massive flashbacks or anything either. You just kept the story rolling. It was good.
Yeah. Yeah. So this one was like, like I said, I wrote it on momentum, and it's a story about momentum. And I've said it to people before. I think that these real life conflicts like this, they're fast and they're dirty, and that's kind of what I wanted to. That's kind of what I wanted to lean into. Like, he doesn't have weeks of like waging like a range war in a Utah town. Like there's law enforcement, there's things like that. There's they don't have time for downtime.
Yeah. I try to remember that when I'm writing, like when I'm in a scene, and because I write psychological, so I get away with spending more time in their heads. But even then, when I'm in a scene where the tension's really high, I have to remind myself, because I overwrite and then delete, I have to remind myself that I can't rush, or I can't like cut this. I can't spend so much time in their heads when in reality, in a situation that's that tense, you would be rolling. You would just be reactive, right? You don't. And as if there's a gunfight or something, like Graham is in a lot, he's not just going to stop by a tree and be like, oh man, I remember this time when things got really bad for me. Right.
Yeah. You'll see like in the book, like the slower moments where it trigger memories. Like there's one that's like he's riding the same trail that he rode as a kid, and he kind of thinks back to those days with his dad and his brother and how different it was. So there's those brief little flashes where like it's a little slower and he can't afford to, but then he gets snapped back reality by like distant gunshots or whatever.
Yeah.
And he tells himself to focus.
All right. So finally, what's one question you'd like me to ask the next author who comes on the show? And the next author is Angela Douglas. She wrote The Mentor. It is about a best-selling author who is accused of turning a real tragedy into her hit novel when an anonymous writer begins sending her disturbingly personal, predictive work through her online mentorship program, and then people around her begin to die.
Wow. I would say that's pretty layered. I would say how semi-autobiographical it is.
Okay. All right.
as well as, how do you write a writer without slipping into your own point of view?
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
That's me curious, because I read, I mentioned Greg Hurwitz. He wrote one called The Crime Writer. And
yes, I read that. Yeah.
Okay, and then the premise of that one is he's like finds himself in this murder mystery, and he's like, I'm not a detective, but I write about him. And so he's like, I guess I'll, maybe try to do what my characters would do. And so I'm always curious about how people write writers. I don't think I could. I think I would just slip into me being me, and all of a sudden it's like it's first person, and I'm like, no.
Oh, it's a fantastic question. I can't wait to ask her that.
Yeah.
And if you have a few more minutes to stick around for the after show Q&A with some of our rapid fire with our live Patreon members, we'll be jumping right into that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Josh Jensen, No Easy Way Back. I'm holding up the cover again. I think you can see that.
There it is.
Read it, review it. It helps authors a lot if you leave reviews. Thank you for listening and watching. Have a wonderful day.